This is Sculpt Quest. With me seated is a guest, a brother from Uganda. I'm going to give him the chance to introduce himself properly, And today's subject is centered on the importance, the educational importance, the cultural importance, and responsibility that we have to train our children to get to know about our African culture, being born in the diaspora. So, brother, I'm happy to have you here with me today. Please let the people know who you really are.
Yeah, I'm also happy to be here. My name is Frederick James. I come from Uganda.
Yeah.
Yeah, and right now I'm here in Germany.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I see that you are actually a philanthropist, something like that.
Yeah.
Can you tell us exactly what you do?
I head an organization. It has been in existence for about 3 years right now. It's called the KJN Initiative. And in that organization, we do charity activities, basically to help people in communities that are more so. Right now, at the start, we are still in my country where I come from. So we have done a number of projects. So far, we have done 2 projects.
Yeah.
We have gone out to help the children in in Uganda with disabilities in some.
Oh, yeah.
And then the last year we had another charity project that we did in another school, which lacked a lot of basic needs and all the stuff that is to enable the children live a good life just like any other child would love to be. Yeah, and this year again we have another project, and it's on the pregnant mothers, because in Africa, in Uganda, for example, we have some people who go through challenges like giving birth. There are a lot of high mortality rates.
Yeah.
You find that in hospitals there are no, for example, in Germany, when you go to a hospital where women are delivering, you'll find that every material that is needed for the mother to have a successful birth is available, which is not the case over there. So we sat down as a team and we thought that this was really a good cause, and we could really help the people to make an impact to those people and reach out to them in whatever way we can. Yeah.
That's very nice. I mean, I really appreciate the effort, and I think that this is what more and more Africans should delve into to make sure that we give enough help to those back home.
Yeah.
Projects like these are actually needed. So, looking at the African, culture, what do you think we should do as parents? I know you're not yet a dad, but you are an aspiring father.
Yeah, sure.
And I think looking at how we look today in this beautiful African regalia already shows how much we are into our culture.
Yeah.
So, as an African and as a philanthropist, what do you really think we should do to educate, to empower our children based off African culture in Europe?
First of all, I've been in Europe for now, it's coming to 3 years.
Okay.
But I've observed a number of things in regard to culture, and I've seen that there is a lot of a problem that the children with the African background face in Europe.
Yeah.
Because there is a saying that says that when you go to Rome, you're supposed to act like the Romans.
Okay.
So you find that there's a lot of assimilation of the European culture onto the African culture, which in my view is not bad. But I believe every person in life, in order to be respected, it is your identity that matters. It is what you are. It is what people can know you for.
Yeah.
So if you ever come into any place and in any way, if you ever come into any place and you want to be recognized, I think the first thing that everyone recognizes someone on is their way they behave, the way they integrate with people, the way they relate, and so forth. So coming to your question of the culture, I highly think that it is essential and prudent that the African migrants who have come to Europe disembark these values that they have picked from their forefathers onto their children, because it is what defines us as Africans.
Right.
I mean, you find a child who has been in the diaspora for over 10 or 20 years, and he goes back maybe to Uganda, Kenya, Cameroon, Nigeria, all those countries, and he cannot even speak his language.
All right.
And one thing I've discovered that in Europe, language is very essential. Because me, when I was in Uganda, I used to think all whites speak English. Okay. I grew up thinking like that because like English is a very dominant language all over the world.
Okay.
So me, I thought English. When I came to Germany, I realized everything was so different. At some point, I felt like my English was not even helpful at all.
Right.
That's why I had to really sacrifice, learn the language. And this is all to show you that these people actually respect their culture. It is what has made them to be who they are. So why wouldn't an African child know their language? Why wouldn't an African child know the way they are supposed to behave with adults, with elders, for example? Because that is very essential for our upbringing as Africans. Yeah.
So there is this thing about the African music, the Afrobeat. And this is where a lot of kids born abroad anchored on, you know.
Yeah.
Feeling like because they vibe to the Afrobeat, really makes them identified as Africans.
Yeah.
But I always tell some of them that it is not about that. It is not about the vibe. It is about you wanting to know what that culture is. It is about you wanting to connect to your root.
Yeah.
That matters. So I told them the music that you listen to, you only vibe to it because you hear others sing, you hear others dance. And the way I vibe to it is different from yours because I connect to the story that the artist is talking about.
Yeah.
So for you to fully understand what these people mean and to fully enjoy or to be on the same vibration with me when I listen to Afrobeat, please, you've got to go home and connect to the dust and connect to the forest and connect to all these things that really makes us Africans.
Yeah.
It's not about color, it's about spirituality.
Yeah.
So I got to understand that a lot of them have never been back home. And if you ask some of these children born abroad to list 6 different African countries, some of them not even know.
Wow.
Some can only tell you Nigeria or Ghana because these are the top Afrobeat nations in Africa.
In Europe.
So do you think as a result of their ignorance, are their parents failing to do what they should do to educate these children more?
Yes, it goes back to the parents. Because, like as I've said, for example, here in Deutschland, you know from the onset, like even when you're learning the language, they're teaching you the culture of Germans. They're teaching you how to behave like them. Even when you go into where they work from, where they sit, if you relate more with them, you'll actually find out that these people have principles that they are supposed to follow. So the ignorance is brought about by the African parents, because why wouldn't you tell your child your origin? Why wouldn't you tell them, for example, if Burna Boy has made a good song, and we all know Burna Boy is one of the greatest African artists that we have, who is all over the world. He has good music, but you would go ahead and tell your child that Burna Boy comes from Nigeria. He has an African background. Him being an African did not stop him from having his talent, or did not stop him from having influence all over the world. You know? So the question is that I think it's the duty of the African parents, because you're not, when you go into the European way, they're not going to tell you about Africa, and you cannot. We are not going to blame them for that, because this is their place. And so then that means we as the owners of our roots, we are supposed to talk to our children and tell them, oh yeah, I come from Uganda. This is my tribe. I mean, this is our culture.
This is how we greet in the morning.
This is how we greet kingdoms, and even go ahead to take that child to their country. I mean, when they have vacations, it's not all about spending it.
No, vacation is just to Mallorca. It's not about
Yeah,
Zanzibar.
yeah.
Vacation is about going to
Exactly.
Milano. It's not about going to Greece. It's not
It's
about
only going to Paris.
Accra. It's not about going to,
Lagos.
It's not about that. It's
Yeah.
about going to all these other great nations
Yeah.
to feel westernized.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, I don't know if it's safe enough for me to say that it starts with parenting. And that parenting in African sense has to do with mannerism, which means that as Africans, your child should have a way of presenting themselves in the public.
Yeah.
Growing up as an African, I saw that it was not right for you to take something from an elderly person with one hand or even with your left hand,
Sure.
which is something that I see a lot happening here. And I see a lot of us giving our children the room to even call us by our first name. I don't know how possible, I don't know how craziness you were to call it that in his first name in Africa. So I think when you see these little things, you get to understand how fallen we are when it comes to training our children culturally, rooted from the African culture. I understand that the African way of parenting is all about authoritarian way of doing things where your parents actually have the total say, decision making, and you as a child, you have to follow. Whereas the European way is more liberal, is more all inclusive. The child has to be part of the decision making, and they have their choices. But I don't know if you think that is a problem because we are suffering between the African way of parenting and the Western way of parenting. Do you think that's a problem where these people cannot really find a balance to educate our children properly?
Yeah, that is a very big point, and I would say yes, there is a cultural clash between the European culture and the African culture, because as you have said, the African culture is that which implies authoritativeness over the children, and then the European culture is whereby everyone has a right to speak their mind, But I mean, me as a person, I think it's always good to borrow from each other because we learn from each other. I mean, there are some things that in the European culture that as Africans we need to embrace.
True.
Yeah. For example, on the issue of authority, you don't have to beat a child to instill discipline in them. You don't have to slap a child. You don't have to scold them. There are other amicable ways that are peaceful that you can have that child learn to do something. Because if you say that you're going to beat a child or you're going to shout at them or you're going to do this and that, I mean, you have done that since you are young, but how has it helped you? And the world is not about fighting,
violence.
It's not about who is the strongest man, that is the one who is going to win the battle. No, it's not about that. But then, yet again, there are also some values that may be from the European culture which don't apply to us. I mean, like respect. For example, I must respect my parent. I cannot just come to my mother or father and I call them by their first or second name. I've never done that in my life, and I don't think I'll ever do it.
But how would you feel to find yourself in that situation?
Of course, it feels awkward. It's awkward. I just can't imagine it that a toddler or you, even if you are an adolescent, that you can stand up to your father and call him by, let's say, Ronald, come here. I mean,
this is common.
That is total disrespect.
And let me shock you even more. I've seen cases, I've experienced situations where a child come home and ask his father to excuse him he has to look for a place to go because he's having his friends coming over. So they might have to excuse them.
Yeah.
So they can have some comfort with his friends. And I'm like, okay. How do you feel about this case?
I think then that is also still disrespect, because I mean, it's your father who is paying for that house. I mean, how do you begin? There is an African proverb that a child never grows in front of their parents' eyes.
True.
Regardless of what, even if you're old, like now we are adults, and maybe you become so highly achieved, so long as your parent is still on earth, you can never be above them, because they are your parents. So I don't know, it just doesn't make sense.
You know, for me, right up to this moment that
Yeah.
I have become a man and an aspiring father, there are things that I cannot even post on my WhatsApp status
Yeah,
because I know mom is watching.
yeah,
I know aunt is watching.
Yeah.
I know that uncle is watching. But this is not the case. I mean, there is freedom of speech,
yeah,
you know, for you to freedom of press, for you to do whatever you want to do. I'm just bringing this in because I think there is also that failure in the path of our parents abroad are not, you know, being keen to see what these young people actually watch. You know, because what they actually consume on the internet has a greater influence. Remember that we do not spend enough time with them.
yeah,
They go to school, they go to Kita and wherever they go, they meet with the Germans, the Westerners. And that means that they spend a lot of time with these people compared to you.
Yeah.
Probably when they come back, they have just 2-3 hours to spend with you. And that become a challenge for you to even pay attention, to oversee what they are doing, or to even instill some values in them. So it becomes difficult even for us to even teach these children what we really need to teach them. But then again, we talked about African festivals, African activities that are happening. Why are we still not going there to promote? Why are we not being able to be a part of our community here where we can learn some things? Why are we failing to take these children to this gathering that we push them to see why they need to learn some of these things?
Thank you for your question. First of all, we live in a world which is full of, like, this is the 21st century and information is all over the world. So I think the information bit, that one, you may not be able to stop your child from watching anything or what, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able, even if you are left with them, I don't think you would still be able to monitor them and know, okay, he's doing this, okay, she's doing that, or like that cannot be. But this is where the culture comes in,
Right.
because if you have instilled in your child values that are supposed to mold him as a man or as a lady, for example, a girl, you're going to instill in her values, and you're going to tell her there is a way you're supposed to mold yourself up. You're not supposed to be carried by the world and think that, oh, I mean, I'm going to just go and slay and look so good, and I mean, I'm going to get some guy off who is going to get me off the street or something. Because at the end of the day, all those things don't last. I mean, your culture defines you. So if someone has been instilled with good values to know their self-worth, their self-respect, however much they're exposed to all this information, they will sieve it out and know that this is the way I'm supposed to present myself in public. I want to borrow a quote from the Bible. The Bible, I'm a Christian. The Bible says that train up a child the way they are supposed to be, and when they grow up, they'll never depart from it.
Yeah.
And I've really seen that in my life, because because I was raised up in a family of Christians, even there are some things I cannot do.
Right.
Even at all this level that I've been exposed to, all this information that I've been exposed to, there are some things so now I want to relate that to the culture. So if you have instilled in your child right from childbirth, I mean from the way they have grown up to adulthood, there are values, there are things that they're not going to do regardless of what they see. Because at the end of the day, as I told you, anyone in life can only be respected for what they stand for. If you cannot stand for what you believe in, then you don't deserve to be anywhere.
True.
Yeah. Everyone has principles and guiding values that they need to be to mold them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, from the way we look, I have a question to ask.
Yeah.
I have noticed that more and more Africans are falling slowly away from their traditional regalia. I understand that being in Europe, it is kind of expensive to get this because, it's not cheap
I know.
to get it, So
Yeah.
after being abroad for quite a long time, you find it difficult to manage financially to afford some of these things.
Yeah.
But again, I think we see a lot of us ignoring to get some of this.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
this is more of identity
Yeah,
too.
true.
Wherever
true.
I go to, you won't need to ask me where are you from because you know
Exactly.
actually that I'm from Africa.
Yeah.
And more of the Arabics, more of the Asians, actually, every single day that you see them, especially the Indians, you would never see an Indian go for too long without putting on one thing that sends a signal that this person is from India or Pakistan. And this is not so with our people. And if we cannot at least get something that reflects or sends out that signal as a father to our children, but that, hey, this is what I am. This is part of me. This is my culture. I wonder how possible it will be for these children to see that thing of any value.